Welcome to Women Lead, a production of the Women of Color Empowerment Institute. We are your host. I am Bernadette Norris Weeks.
I'm Kathy Eggleston.
I'm Michelle Austin Pammy.
Today, our show is about mental health. Unacknowledged and untreated, mental health issues sap the potential of too many girls and women, disrupting educational and professional trajectories and limiting the ability to achieve dreams.
This can translate into a major loss of learning and lifetime professional development potential. In short, a loss of future leaders. Women of color suffer disproportionately from the kinds of adverse life experiences that can lead to depression, anxiety disorders, and toxic levels of chronic stress.
New mothers of color, notably, have a rate of postpartum depression that is about 2 to 3 times higher than the rate for all new mothers. This vast disparity reflects major gaps in both screening and treatment for mental health issues among women of different racial and ethnic backgrounds.
Jane Marks, the longest practicing licensed psychotherapist in the state of Florida, was recently in town.
I'm coming to you guys from a different perspective because I'm going to talk about two things that I've talked about for over the last 53 years, and that would be self-care, which is big now, and balance. And these are things. Balance is what keeps us steady. I want you to think about your lives right now and how much balance is in there. If we are real low in one area of our life of balance, I'm going to go through 7 areas which I think are key. And so I want you to be mindful of this. And next year when you come to the conference and you're sitting at the table and you look at your balance list and you can say, well, you know what, I'm high here, low here, I need to work on this, or I'm high straight across the board. When I think of balance, balance comes through choice. And, you know, it's the choices that we make. And so the first place we start, at least I start, is with your professional life. So if you look at your professional life right now, for those of you who are sitting out there, would you say that you are at 90% of your professional life? Do you love what you do? 90%. How many people out there, about 60% or 40%? What about some of the young girls out there? So everybody in here is feeling pretty good about where they are. So 90, 40, oh, excellent, 40. So where do you want to be? Macro social work. You're teaching, okay, teaching. All right, so are you prepared to start your side hustle? Side hustle. In fact, how many people in here have side hustles? See? All right. So my side hustle, we all have to have one because, you know what, it energizes us and makes us feel good. My side hustle is that I teach a Zumba class. And in my Zumba class, the average age, get this, is 69. And in my class, I'm so thrilled because even at this age, my girlfriend Thelma and I, we're like 75, but we keep it, you know, we keep it together. Whenever we have big events in Tallahassee, they call our group because we are full of energy, and they're always so surprised by our music. I loved your music. I love Lizzo, though. Lizzo is my favorite. And so when you see these old women coming out and the first song you hear is a Lizzo song, you know you're in for it. So they get us in there to do the same, to motivate crowds, to get them moving, to get them up and going. And so for me, that's how I pause, that's how I check out, that's how I keep balance in my life. That's a big part of my life. So that's my side hustle. So girls, always keep thinking about those things that, you know, you want to keep in mind that your profession, so much of us, our profession is who we are. It's not all of who we are, but it's a big part of who we are. So we want to experience at least a nice number of satisfaction. In my case, it was 98%. When BNC filed for bankruptcy, and this is the tough part of the story, and they filed for bankruptcy in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I thought, well, you know, that's the end of my TV career. You know, who does a national TV career in their 70s? I'm thinking I'm all that. And then when it closed, I thought, well, this is the end, but it's not. Because I've been called upon, just like she was saying, this moment was happening, and now to my next moment. So we've been asked to do, you know, we're working on a new show at this point, so I'm very excited about that. Now, again, we're talking about balance. We're also talking about physical wellness. That's the second part. Physically, are you taking care of yourself? And what your percentages are. So if you think about, let me see if I can't point to somebody at the second table back here. Physically, right? The Wells Fargo table. Physically. All right, the Wells Fargo table. Are you girls taking care of yourself physically? For the most part, okay? And so you are doing what on a regular basis? Are you exercising? Eating well? Hydrating? Hydrating, all right? So many times patients come to my office, and again, it's one small thing that's making a difference. See, now see, she just got that water now. Is everybody, all right? So, is everybody getting their water? You know, and certainly part of taking yourself physically is also the recovery part.
We had the opportunity to sit down with her to discuss mental health issues. Over the past 5 decades, Jane has helped countless families navigate the challenges of life and has many other talents as well.
Indeed, she does. Jane Marks has made her mark at the intersection of media and mental health.
She connects on issues close to the heart, from her bi-weekly spot on a local news program to appearances on our nation's fastest-growing news network dedicated to covering Black and brown communities. Jane is a woman leading in both mental health and in media.
Ladies, mental health is finally getting the attention that it needs, especially in Black and brown communities. I mean, there used to be a time we were afraid to talk about it. We're not anymore. We're saying out loud. We have therapists and all of these other things that just never existed before for women of color.
Well, one thing's for sure, mental health is health. It's not something special that we can't address. We can address it. We should pursue addressing it, finding cures where it's possible, or just managing it. And this is something that is so key that although we discussed it before, we'll be discussing mental health. And we have the opportunity to do so with someone exceptional.
Like Jane Marks.
Like Jane Marks.
Yes, I mean, self-care is so important, but Jane Marks, licensed psychotherapist, knows all of the terminology and can really help us understand what's happening in our bodies and our minds.
And not to mention, Jane Marks was on Body Electric in the 80s. I mean, so this woman, she is the complete package. We cannot wait for you to hear from Jane Marks. She is a psychotherapist, and she'll be with us right after these messages.
This is James.
Jimmy!
Mom, Dad, this is James.
Jimmy!
James? James Harrison from Roosevelt High?
Jimmy! Yeah! Oh! You good, Jimmy?
The 2021 Toyota RAV4.
Jimmy!
The RAV for all of you. Right now, lease a new 2021 Toyota RAV4 LE for just $249 a month for 36 months. Toyota, let's go places.
At the Women of Color Empowerment Institute, our mission is to enhance and expand leadership by women of color. We do this in a variety of different ways, including but not limited to providing mentorship opportunities for young professionals where we assist in helping to create paths to leadership. We empower women to develop capacities for social change. We produce programs that promote heritage awareness, and we provide training opportunities for business and government. Our institute holds seminars focused on professional success techniques, and we host many other events such as our popular Advocates for Change and Leaders Connect. The Women of Color Empowerment Institute publishes a magazine called Women Lead. Our signature event is the Women of Color Empowerment Conference, a yearly conference where hundreds of leaders gather from all across the United States and beyond. To learn more about membership and how you can support our programs or be a sponsor of the Women Lead TV, visit us at nationalwomenofcolor.com. Again, that's nationalwomenofcolor.com.
The law office of Austin Pammies Norris Weeks Powell is a full-service law firm practicing in the area of governmental law, including the representation of municipalities, civil litigation, personal injury, real estate, and corporate transactional matters. With over 100 years of collective experience, our attorneys are admitted to practice before state courts, federal courts, and the United States Supreme Court. We are conveniently located in downtown Fort Lauderdale and can be reached at 954-768-9770. Or for more information about the law firm of Austin, Pammies, Norris, Weeks, Powell, visit our website at apnwlaw.com. That's apnwlaw.com.
Welcome back to Women Lead. We are so happy to share with you our interview with Jane Moggs, licensed psychotherapist, to share with us her perspective on a very critical issue, mental health.
You have been a mental health expert for over 5 decades. And again, you don't look like it, but you have been. And so I'm wondering, how did you get started with all of this, with going into the field of mental health?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I knew very early. I knew when I was 12 years old exactly what I wanted to do. And I think I found working with teenagers over the years is that people who know what they want to do very early in life ultimately end up doing that. And so when I went to Florida State, one of the first women of color, right. And, you know, you had to navigate those 4 years basically by yourself back in those days when you were the first of the pioneers. And so I knew what the journey was like. And so when I started in mental health, I was ready to go. I was ready to just learn as much as I could and take it on. And so I've had a fabulous career working with young people. I have indeed.
When you're working with women of color or girls of color, are there any special considerations that a practitioner would look at? In other words, how are we different?
Well, you're not necessarily different, but it's so important to know a little bit of, no, first, here's what I would say, because I train young clinicians. You have to listen. I think so many times when people go into therapy, and one of the things I say, when you're looking for a therapist, make sure the therapist is listening to you. You know, we talk about cultural sensitivity, because I think that's what keeps a lot of young people from going into therapy, because they're afraid that they don't understand who they are, whose they are, or what they are. And so make sure that whatever therapist you connect with, they listen. Now, what I find now with of color patients is they're requesting Black therapists. So most of us that are of color, at least up in the Northeast section, we don't have to worry about patients. We're very, very busy.
Wow, that is a huge point that you're opening up for me when you're talking about young people and barriers to getting care or help that they need. On the one hand, I see young people a little bit more able to talk about it, to talk about mental health than our parents and our generation was. But on the other hand, you know, this whole social media presence, and I'm afraid that it is really potentially negatively impacting, especially our youth of color. Give us some thoughts on that.
Well, you know, social media is impacting not only youth of color, just teenagers in general, which are certainly the most impressionable group. What we do know is that the most likely population of people to experience extreme mental health issues are kids from ages 18 to 24. And so for kids of color who don't have access to mental health, they're not used to, you know, they're not coming in, they're not growing up in families where mom has gone to therapy or dad has gone, or grandmother even knew what therapy was about. So they don't even see that as an option. However, now think about this. When you think about people like Simone Biles and Naomi, they're talking about their mental health issues. You know, you got these elite athletes who are saying, listen, I'm going to say something, and I'm going to do something about my mental health, and I want you to do the same thing. And so if you say something, it's going to make a difference. So what we're seeing an increase in numbers. So I'm pretty optimistic about what I'm seeing. I know that for years and years and years, as far as the community in general, we were compromised when it came to mental health. You know, you mentioned that I have been working a long time, and for the first 25 years I was in practice, I have to say, I saw maybe 1 or 2 kids of color. I just didn't see them. Now, the last 25 years has been a different picture. You know, with the advent of, you know, managed health care and insurance and certainly with affordable health care, we've seen more youngsters come into it. But historically, it's not really the case.
Well, it's interesting that you said something about how younger people are more focused, because what we found, we have our Women of Color Empowerment Institute has a mentorship program, and each year they're challenged to try to find a project, a health project that they will focus on. And it can be anything. It could be about diabetes or heart disease or really anything. But for the last 3 years, they've selected mental health as their focus project, which has been surprising.
And I don't find that surprising, because I see kids more in tune with it now. They're more sensitive to it. You know, I think certainly when the school shooting started, that what we saw was a community, by and large, pay closer attention to it in terms of teaching kids at least to say something. And think about this. Think about what's just happened in the last 3 or 4 weeks with the new 988 number. If you have mental health concerns, and it's not just suicidal concerns, we now have a resource nationally that we can call. So that means that our reach is bigger.
Good point.
Well, you said we weren't different, but when you consider the racism that people of color generally have to deal with, doesn't that add a certain level of trauma that may impact mental health?
Oh, absolutely. You know, think about this. Kids of color have been raised by women of color who have had jobs that are driven by stress. They live in the course of it. And so one of the things that I find interesting is that kids are used to a certain level of stress. So they're not likely to say, you know, I'm experiencing distress until it gets so bad, or until they can't get out of bed, or until the depression, anxiety is so bad. And that's when we tend to see most of our patients. Patients, by and large, and particularly kids of color, they do not come for personal growth and development. When they come to see a therapist, it's because there's a real problem, or because their physicians have referred them, or because parents or families are at their wits' end, and because they're really frightened that something is going on, or their functioning is there's such a shift in functioning. But in terms of, like, we see other kids who come for personal growth and development, we just don't, not with kids of color.
Wow. You know, going back to women of color, and obviously a great portion of our audience is women of color leaders. You know, we have stressful careers. We typically carry the weight of the family as well. And so when we're feeling stress and depressed, we tend to suck it up like we've always done.
Muscle through it.
Yeah. What do you say to women who are in that situation? I know lots are viewing right now. What do you say to them about self-care and actually taking the step to see a professional?
Well, here's what we say about self-care. You know, self-care used to be a term that was applied to a luxurious experience. What we know now is that self-care is no longer an option. You know, it is a must. You know, when you think about where we are at this point, yeah, I grew up, and certainly much older than you guys, but we grew up in a world that was very predictable. You know, we knew, you know, parents went to work, they were company folks, and they went to work, and, you know, there were certain milestones that we were hit. But in today's world, on a day-to-day basis, you don't know what's going to hit tomorrow, whether it's climate change or whether it's, you know, mass shootings. You know, it's just a different kind of world. And so we tell women on a regular basis, listen, if you don't say something, if you don't talk about it, then you're not going to heal it. In other words, if you don't talk about it, you know, it's going to stay there, and in a lot of cases, it gets worse, certainly as we get older. So what we're saying is step up, say something, take care of yourself, and make it intentional.
Yes, good stuff. And I want to segue just a little bit, because I think this also has a lot to do with mental health. Now, you have been at the forefront of fitness and making sure that you take care of your body and exercise, and you do all of these things, and you teach, I think, and you can tell us a little bit about that too, either Pilates or something.
Zumba.
Like Zumba. Okay,
you're certified Zumba instructor.
Certified Zumba, of course you are. So what I'm wondering is, you know, and years ago in the 80s, you were on a PBS, a show called Body Electric. Remember that?
Absolutely,
yes,
absolutely.
Right? So what I'm wondering is, how does that play a part in mental health and in terms of keeping your body strong and doing everything that you can do to stay physically fit?
You know, one of the things that I tell every single one of my patients before I even begin work is I make them walk for an hour every single day until we have the first major session. Because what we know about exercise is that it raises the serotonin. If it's 45 minutes to an hour of consistent exercise, it raises the serotonin. So, you know, you want to make sure that when you are exercising, and all this will make sense in a second, and I discovered it when I started dancing. I wish I could say I discovered it by myself. I didn't. My husband actually got me my first dance class. And
John Marks.
That's right. and after he did that, I discovered, you know, that was back in the days of aerobics, and I couldn't believe how I felt after those first few classes. And then while everybody around me was experiencing stress and, you know, they were looking at the world from a negative perspective, I would come back for classes, and even my husband would say, it must have been a good class because you feel such a sense of well-being after dance. And the other beauty of exercise is, and it's not just the feeling that you have. Think about the sense of community you feel with the people that you dance with. You know, I have my little group that I dance with. We still perform. I mean, the average age of our girls is 68, and we're still performing. And a lot of that has to do with years of having exercise on a regular basis. And so I tell women, young women of color, old women of color, this has got to be a part of the fiber of your life, the rhythm of your life, because it makes a difference in how you feel.
I'm interested in understanding what stress is. When I say this, it's because it's a term that we use loosely. You know, somebody says, oh, I'm so stressed out today. And then you read about it. Mm-hmm. They tell you that it raises your cortisol levels, etc. If you're experiencing stress, and it could cause all kinds of physical illnesses. I'm just wondering, can you help us understand
what stress
is?
Stress, I think, is an umbrella term. You know, because stress for Bernadette could be that she has difficulty sleeping on a regular basis.
That's true.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Check.
And for you, it could be compromised concentration. And for you, it could be just having a difficult time getting started. Or it could be a combination of all three. So stress expresses itself in all kinds of forms. You know, for the most part, when we see someone, we see sadness. We see a future that looks dark. We see tearfulness, dysphoria, or just horrible, horrible self-perceptions. So stress comes in so many forms. You know, I wish there was one term that says, okay, this is stress, because we could find a cure for it. But stress is usually a combination of things. What you know is that either A, you're not able to meet the demands in your world. That's when you know you're really stressed out. You just can't meet them. You know, you can get some of them done, but you just can't do it anymore. Stress could mean the fact that as a parent, you define yourself as incapable of doing the things that you think you should be doing. Now, for other people, just let the child go ahead, and the concept, and this shows you how old I am, was called yard children. Back in the old days, children would be raised in the yards. Mm-hmm. Think about it. Mm-hmm. You left home at 8 o'clock and came back at 5. You might come in for some water and a sandwich, but that was that. And our parents didn't worry about it. Now we're consumed about how we're raising our children, and are we doing the right thing? Are we exposing them? Are we exposing them to culturally sensitive experiences? So stress, I would say, is an umbrella term. And, for different cultures, it's different experiences. You would share with me that you come from the Caribbean.
Yes.
Right. And so think about this. What would you say a mom from the Caribbean would call a stressful day?
In the Caribbean or here? That would be totally different.
That's exactly the point. Yeah, so it's an umbrella term. You cannot define stress specifically as one particular thing. It could be you have a husband who's an alcoholic. That's stress, or for you, you have not been able to lose those 6 pounds. Stress.
Or 10 or 20.
I don't know if I want to go there. Let's not go there.
So, it's an encompassing term.
Absolutely.
And anxiety?
Well, anxiety, that's a little bit different. Anxiety, there's a fear. There are actually physiological things with anxiety, at least typically in my experience. You will see rapid heartbeat. Sometimes you'll see the blood pressure go up or down, and just fear, sometimes something, rapid heartbeat. You see all sorts of, it's clearer to define anxiety than it is stress.
Mm-hmm. And now, anxiety, depression, oftentimes there are pharmaceuticals associated with these kinds of issues. What is your perspective on the use of those?
Oh, I most certainly believe in pharmacological options. I think first, though, and this is what I find with approximately 90% of the people who come and see me, what we find is that almost everyone that we evaluate is usually generally on that borderline clinical depression scale. And going back to your point about self-care, when I have my patients follow, exercise and eat well, I change everything. And in other words, I'm not going to do anything with you until you do the following things for me. And once you do that, you know what I find? I find that approximately 60 to 70% of the patients come back 40 to 100% better. Wow. And we have had no therapy. As a community of color, we don't take care of ourselves like that. And so for someone to pick up something like dance or some kind of experience that you can throw yourself into that takes you away from the stressors, that you were just talking about, makes a huge, huge difference in day-to-day function. It does.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been tremendous. We've so enjoyed having you with us, Jane. Thank you so much for joining us on Women Lead. So that was great, ladies. I mean, Jane really defined some things for us. A lot of times we talk about anxiety and depression and things like that, but you don't really have a clinical way to connect it with real life experiences. I think she did a lot of that today.
And I think very importantly, she made us more aware. And I think that this mental health issue is a question of awareness. We need to understand it. We need to be aware of it so that we can address it.
And I think she really educated us on that mind-body connection and how much our bodies and taking care of our bodies can impact our mental health.
Yeah, I remember that she actually told us that before she even starts therapy, she prescribes basic things like exercising. She tells the patient, don't come to me until you've done these things. You eat right, you walk every day, etc. And then you come to me because your mental health already improves by the mere fact that you do these things. That's pretty impressive.
And that's something we all needed to hear. So thank you for joining us. And until the next time, be empowered.